Welcome to FrieNDA, a one-on-one conversation show with remarkable people I've come to call my friends. Since this is the first show, we're going to discuss the format briefly. We'll have two, maybe three sections for each show. This one in particular is going to have three. The first is going to center on the guest's childhood and upbringing, focusing on important moments or people in their lives that help shape them into the person that they are today. In the second section, we'll explore their professional life and discuss the big breaks, failures, and successes. And in the final section, anything goes. Questions on the industry, viewer chat provided questions. We'll keep this section open ended so new ideas can float in and out. Joining us on the premiere episode is none other than Rami Ismail. Rami is a pillar of the independent game scene who co-founded the now defunct studio Vlambeer in 2010, co-developing games like Ridiculous Fishing and Nuclear Throne. He's helped countless developers with countless tasks and earned numerous accolades for doing so along the way. In the past years, I've been lucky enough to call Rami a friend, and I'm happy to welcome him to the show as our first guest. Rami, welcome to FrieNDA. How's it going?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Wow, it feels big when there's something new. This feels big.
Does it feel big? I guess that's a compliment. I'll take that. I'll
hmm
take your kind words. Let's ask the real question here. The hot topic. Did you get a PS5 pre-ordered?
I missed it. In the Netherlands, they're actually really hard to get at the moment, and I just straight up missed it.
Well, maybe a better question. Do you even have to pre-order consoles anymore? Is Rami Ismail? Do you worry about that?
No,
I didn't think so.
no. If I want one, I can get one.
I,
It's
I
fine.
figured as much. I figured as much. What about a
But
3080? Did you get a graphics card?
I No, but I can get those as well. Like the thing is, a lot of this is my friends doing incredible work, right? So I just want
Sure.
to, I can afford it, so I want to support them.
Sure.
So I
Okay.
always feel bad going like, send me the freebie, right? Like that. That's just part of me just goes like, no, 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 no. Okay,
Yeah.
I should pay. So I really wanted to pre-order one, but if I can't get one, I will get one.
Okay. Noted. The 3080s I don't know if you saw it. That was insane. They were gone in I think 30 seconds they were gone from every retailer that I was tracking. I haven't ever
It
seen that
was
before.
Nope. I mean, but it's also when you look at that card, it makes sense. Like there is
Yeah.
literally no reason not to want that card.
Yeah, that is very true. That is very true. We'll talk a little bit more about the industry later, but in the first section here, I want to talk a little bit more about your formative years, more specifically your family and their roles in it. I guess to start things off with, are you an only child? I've never actually asked if you have brothers and sisters.
I'm not. I grew up in a family of three, and I'm the oldest.
The oldest. Okay.
The
How was being the
oldest. Yeah.
oldest? Are all the stereotypes
It,
true?
I think so. It's a weird thing. You grow up with sort of first of all, you're the experiment, right?
Mm,
Like you're the one where your parents have no idea what to do. They're just like, this is a human thing now. Like it kicks and cries, and you need to stick food in it every now and then. And oh god, so you're kind of the experiment. You're like, we'll see how it goes, and your parents are kind of figuring out how to be parents and like whether to be strict or whether to be open, and all their expectations of parenthood go out of the window. Um, and then suddenly you have younger siblings, and I think from very early on, you kind of learn to feel responsible for them, like you care for them. Um, but you're also the one that has gone through everything already, so they kind of look up to you by default, just by how things are. Um, I got really lucky with my family and with my siblings. Honestly, like we're a very strange group of three. Um, I'm sort of like I'm like the older one, like the elder, I guess. You know, like I wouldn't call it the brain, but like I'm sort of that one. I did the things. I have this successful
how
like
much older are you?
company. Only like it's 2 years between each of us.
Oh, okay. So not so
Um,
much.
yeah, and then the middle child is he's pretty much the foundation of every like if you need something, he's there. Um, If you don't need him, he is not. Like he's like
He's like
it's the
Batman.
nicest. He's like genuinely the Batman of the family,
Nice.
and um, in that regard, just very important, sort of for like the cohesion of that little group of people that we are.
Yeah.
And then the youngest one, she's definitely the heart of the whole thing. Like also, I guess if you if you have to, also kind of the manager, like just keeps track of everything. Like mom's birthday is in like 2 weeks. Like, I have this like mom mentioned this as a birthday gift. Should we?
Oh wow, she
Shall
goes
I
the
just
distance. She doesn't remember the date.
yeah?
She
Shall I
remembers the
just
gift
send
as
you?
well.
Yep, everything. So between the three of us, it's this really weird complementary set of like who we are and what we do, and it was always very nice growing up. We we got in tons of trouble as a group and individually. Um, we also were kind of a weird group in that all of us grew up between two different cultures because I'm half Dutch, half Egyptian, and
Right.
that is obviously true for my siblings as well. But we all grew in very different directions. Like I ended up being a little bit more like I don't know, like a little bit more Muslim than the others. Like brother ended up sort of like in on more on the Dutch side. My sister ended up being more culturally Arab. So it's just this. I don't know how this happened, but all of us are different. If you told us that they bought us at different stores, I'd be like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, but it works. It works super well.
Yeah. Yeah. What about your parents? What they do for a living, or what do they do for a living, rather?
So my parents, so my parents are interesting. My mom works in sort of like what's the word? Like sort of legal light sort of stuff. And she's a very hard worker. She's been um, from the time I was young, like every day, you know, like she took care of going to work, doing her job, and then before that, she would make breakfast for all of us and make sure all of us were ready for school. Then she would work. She would come home, take care of dinner, take care of making sure that we were entertained and doing our thing, and then after dinner, there'd be like an hour where things were pretty calm, I think, for her, and then she'd make tea because we always grew up at like 8:30. We would have tea with milk, like shai beleven. That's like an Arabic Egyptian thing, with a stroopwafel, which is like the best Dutch waffle in the world.
I've had those
And
before.
then
Can't confirm.
they're phenomenal. And then we'd go to bed, right? Like 8:30 was bedtime, and that was it for the day. And that would just repeat over and over. On Saturday, we would have soccer practice, go to soccer. She would handle that. And then on Sunday, we would go to grandma because grandma was getting older and like we wanted to visit. Um, and I think that was my mom every day of my life until I was 17 when I moved out. And she kept doing that, obviously, for the others. But I think it's only recently that mom has had time for mom,
Mm.
and it's been lovely. My dad is an interesting case. Obviously, an immigrant to the Netherlands, first illegal when he was younger, and obviously you don't get good jobs in that situation. He naturalized, he legalized. Eventually, still couldn't get really good jobs, and it wasn't for quite a while until he ended up being a teacher, and he teaches Dutch actually to immigrants to the Netherlands because when he came to the Netherlands, he found it so challenging to to learn Dutch that he went, well, I don't want anybody else to have that much trouble integrating into the country. So he ended up being a Dutch teacher, and that has always been incredibly inspiring to me. Um, that job kind of went away as immigration numbers started to drop
Mm.
and rules got stricter for immigration. So nowadays, I think he teaches math. There's a whole story behind that. He was going to teach history, but he refused to teach the Dutch version of history because he's like, what? He was just like, because I went to his place and he said like, oh, I can choose between history or math, right? And I'm like, oh, cool. What are you going to do? He's like, history. Of course, history. Like, I'm Egyptian. I know history. And then the next week I visited, and there were just like books all over the place, right? And definitely not politely put in places, just like kind of like thrown across. I was like, what is wrong? And he's just like, is this what they teach you here? Like, this is what they teach you?
Wait,
I'm
how
like,
old were you when this
yeah.
happened?
This was like 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago.
Okay.
Um, when the immigration numbers started dropping, and he's like, "This is what they teach you." I'm like, "Yeah, what's wrong with it?" He's like, "Okay, so let me get this right. Like prehistory." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "The Egyptians." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's good." He's like, "The Romans and the Greek." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "The Renaissance." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What happened in between?" I'm like, the Dark Ages, like just nothing. He's like, "No, that was just here. Here, nothing happened. Like Europe, nothing happened. Everybody else, we were inventing the zero. We were inventing advanced mathematics, all right, empires, architecture, language. Like we did all this. And your history just book goes, things were bad. Let's skip to the part where we were important again. So I worked with my dad actually on trying to make like an additional like curriculum for the
Sure.
class, and like we got like courses together, we got books together. We made this great proposal, and he went back to his school, and he just went like, "Can I teach this?" And that's why he teaches math now because they said no. So he refused to do history, and now he teaches people how to like do multiplications and stuff. So
Hmm. Okay. All
not
right.
what he wanted to do, but
It worked out. It worked out.
it is
Uh,
what it is. Yeah.
Egyptian father, Dutch mother. That's a mix that you don't often hear about. At least I don't often hear about here in the States. Like, what were some of your favorite customs and traditions to come from that? You mentioned, the tea and stroopwafel. Was there any others that come to mind quickly?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it. Egypt have very big communal meals. That's like a major thing. It's a very warm sort of. The Arabs are very warm people, and that you can meet somebody and have them over for dinner like the same day. Um, and that was always a big part of my life growing up, which just it's very much a culture of um, the family unit is very important, but the family involves friends. Like friends are family, right? Like they like the only thing that would stop you from considering a friend family is if
Mm.
your friend goes against your family. That's kind of the only exception. Um, but it was like foods, music, movies, for the Egyptian side mostly. The Dutch don't really have a lot of food. Like it's just not our strength. We deep fry everything, and then we
That
mash other stuff together.
this sounds
Uh,
great so far. I think this is a
you
strength.
would you would enjoy it. But there's literally nothing like if you ask me like Dutch cuisine, we have something called hutspot, which is literally you just mash some stuff together until it's kind of unhealthily brown green, and then you eat it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, our waffles are good. The Dutch are very different. They're the best way to define the Dutch is probably the most Dutch saying in the world, which is if you act crazy, you're acting. If you act normal, you're acting crazy enough.
I think you've said that
Uh,
before. Yeah, I've heard
right.
that saying somewhere. It might have been from you.
And it is incredibly strange because the Netherlands are a country of above averages. Like nobody, you don't stand out, but also very few people are in real trouble. Like it's just everything's okay. Like the best restaurant in the Netherlands is not close to the best restaurant in the United States, right? Where it's more of a culture of exceptionalism. The
Hmm.
Dutch are just very good at being pretty good at things. And I think that that is a very Dutch thing, and it's actually really it's really relaxed. It's really chill. Like there's just not much to worry about. Things just kind of work, and the culture kind of evolves around this notion of what's the word gezelligheid. There's not really an English translation, but gezellig is imagine a fireplace with like your best friends, and everybody has like a warm drink, and it's like pleasant weather, and everybody is kind of loud, but not so loud that it's upsetting.
Mm.
That that feeling is gezellig,
Like a
right?
hearth. type
Um,
situation.
yeah, kind of, but it doesn't have to be a fireplace, right? It can be in a
Mm,
bar, it can be in a house, it can be at a dinner. But that feeling that scene evokes, that's gezellig. And the Dutch culture is all about gezellig. Everything has to be gezellig. If it's not gezellig, we're not going to do it. Um, but like you invite people over, but the Dutch are a bit more punctual than the Arabs. The Arabs, you invite people at 7. This is a thing I got in trouble for all the time, by the way, because I never knew whether to invite somebody by Arab time or Dutch time. Dutch time is like you invite them at 7, you're there at 7. Egyptian time is like you invite them at 7, people start coming in at like 8:30.
mm.
Like that's kind of this like major problem. Not the only one. There's also food. There's also a food like, but I don't know like the the thing with food. I realized this later. If you're from a poor country, in general, when you get served food, you finish the food, right? And that's a sign of
Sure.
politeness because um, you eat as much as possible, and then the host will give you more, right? And if there is no food left when you're done, then the host didn't have enough food for you because otherwise there would be food left. Like nobody eats perfectly a plate. Like
Right.
you eat a plate and then extra food goes on the plate, and then you eat more. Then at some point you're full and there's food left. So that's polite towards the host because they fed you enough that you can't finish your plate.
Right.
In rich countries, it's the other way around. You eat your food, you finish your plate until it's entirely clean, and that's a polite way of saying, like, "Well, that was delicious. I ate all of it." Right? Um, my Egyptian side always had to leave food on the plate because it was a relatively poor country. So you eat, and then as soon as your plate is out, the host will like just smash food on your plate, and you just go like, "Oh no, no, you look hungry. You have to grow." I was 2 meters tall, like 6'6",
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I didn't need to grow, but that's just go like, you have to grow. And I'm like, I don't need to grow. They're like, no, you have to gain weight. I'm like, I don't need to gain weight. Like, I really didn't. You have to eat. Just eat. Here, just eat.
Sounds like my mom. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
um, but then in the Netherlands, I had to finish my plate. And the amount of times I've been in like massive trouble, either with time or with food, I'd be at a friend and I would leave food on the plate to be polite. And then afterwards, my friend would be,
Yeah.
like it's in the Netherlands, so this is quiet, right? This is not an open conversation.
Right.
Was was it not good? And I'm like, no, it was great. And they're like, but you didn't finish the plate. I'm like, no, 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 like I had enough. And they're like, you didn't like the food. I'm like, no, no, I didn't like the food. Like, give me the plate. I'll finish it. And it's remarkable how often just tiny things between cultures just end in like weird, awkward, like
Sure.
this was my life growing up for like a decade until I start to realize like, oh, people look at the world differently, right? I think that was the first time I realized that maybe my family was different just for having multiple perspectives. Um, the
Which is
only other time I noticed it was obviously when I got trouble from people being like, "Oh, you're foreign,"
right.
but I also didn't really recognize that as a problem, and that's just how life was. So,
Mm. Yeah.
um, but it was fun. It was fun growing up, and it was fun realizing that I had this superpower of seeing things from two angles.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people can't. So it is a superpower in a lot of ways. Uh, Circling back to, you said your dad was a teacher, school for you. Were you always you said that the Dutch like to excel, but not over excel. Were you a good student? Were you a bad student? Are there bad students?
I was a problematic student.
What is that?
Like,
Okay. Now that can
okay,
mean a lot of things. What does problematic
yeah.
mean?
So I'm a curious human, right? Like if you give me a book, I read it.
Sure.
And if it's a subject that I'm interested in, I read it in a day. I'm a fast reader. I remember things very well. I learn very fast. The problem with that is that I'm also very curious and easily bored. So the sort of routine that every year of school was I would join the class, they would give me the books, I would read all the books, remember them for the rest of the year, and just be bored for the rest of the year. And I was just a disaster. Like I was bored, I was annoying, I was obnoxious. But I got great grades because I remembered everything. I could do all the exercises. There was one teacher in particular that I think shaped a lot of my life. His name was Meester. That was like sir, or I don't know what you call a teacher in the U.S. actually,
Teacher,
or in
usually.
English. Teacher, teacher Robert. We call them by first name here. I don't know if that's usual there, but um, Robert. The thing Meester Robert did is he recognized very early on that I was not annoying. I was bored. I mean, I was both, but he was more political than me.
Sure.
Um, and Meester Robert set up two initiatives to make me less bored. One of them was he started a chess program.
Uh,
And with the class and the students the kids that wanted to learn chess, he started to teach chess. And the second thing he did was he allowed me to use the really old, crappy MS DOS computer that was in the corner of the public space, the only computer in the school building except for the manager's computer.
mm.
Um, I got to use that, and that one had ski free, which was a big deal to me because now I could play ski free.
Of course.
Um, those two things, if you trace back my life, those two choices probably decided a lot of my life for me because chess is a game,
Right.
and here I was like trying to figure out game rules and like trying to like cheat, trying to like come up with new game rules, like what if a pawn could move 3 steps, right? Um, and having fun, like playing. And the other thing is like here's this computer. This was the first computer I ever used that I could interact with, and I got a little bit of training in how to use MS DOS, how to navigate through folders, and how to boot up ski free.
Right.
Um, from there, school turned into a disaster again because none of the other teachers cared. The chess program stayed, and over the years, like my school turned into a huge success in the Dutch national chess, like whatever, for kids. We won like the regionals, like uh, what 10 years in a row or something. We won the provincial, like our states, our provinces. There's
Yeah.
12 of them, but all of them are so small that Rhode Island is huge compared to each of them. Um, we won those in the Netherlands. We like if we got to the Netherlands levels, I think the highest we got was like 36th or something, which by Dutch standards is like you're excelling, right? Like this is great. We're we're not a country that wins a lot of things, but the things we do we're really good at, and we're okay with being good at those. The rest we just don't talk about.
Did you have a
Um,
an individual rank at all? I know as a member of the chess club as well growing up, I had like an ELO attached to my name, but I have no idea what it
right.
was.
I don't remember mine either,
Low
but yeah,
thousands or
similar.
something like that. Maybe. I don't that might
Pretty,
seem astronomical. I might be making that up.
pretty good.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, no, it went well. Um, but school was a disaster. I skipped school whenever I could. I I just I had a good time, but I gave the teachers a hard time, I think.
Mm, okay.
And then in high school that got worse because in the Netherlands high school works in a very different way. There's like different levels you can be at, and they're not necessarily for smarter kids or less smart kids. They're for different ways of learning. So
Mm,
you've got like the vocational like schools, you got the practical theoretical schools, and you got like full academic theory. Um, and I think that was where things really turned into a disaster because by that time I had evolved enough of my own skills that I could just decide what I wanted to do with my time. And what I wanted to do with my time is make games.
sure.
Right? That was what I wanted to be doing. I would read the books, I would be done for the year, and there were a lot of teachers that just didn't know how to handle me. One of my favorites permanently banned me from class. But me being an obnoxious, annoying kid, I just decided to go to every class anyway because I had the right to be taught.
What does that
Because
mean to be permanently
surely
banned
I'm.
from class though? It's not like a Twitch chat room, right? Like, what? Do
No,
they just
it literally was. I was not allowed back in
you just couldn't
class.
go in the room. They wouldn't allow you in the
Did
room.
not go in the room ever. Yep.
Huh.
Like I still had to take the test. I had to take them in a separate room.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, I refused because I felt I had the right to be taught by a teacher. That's what we're paying for. Like, not that we're paying much for school in the Netherlands, but so I went into class every time, and he would kick me out every time. And I would go and then make video games because I actually didn't care to be in class. I just wanted the guy to know that I was not gonna like just let him ban me from class. Um, and one time he got into the class and he was just too tired to deal with me and he wanted to go get a coffee and he was just like, Rami, if you always know so well, why don't you just go here? Just how about you teach? Huh? See how easy it is. So obviously the class was a riot because teachers out of the room.
Yeah.
And I just went and on the whiteboard I started writing like mnemonics to make the test easier. As well, like I just yelled over the class, like, "Yo, listen! If you want tests to be easy, just write this down. Like, just write this down, and I swear it'll make your test easier." And I was kind of known as like the annoying smart kid in the class anyway, so people just shut up and started writing things down as I started explaining them. So the teacher came back to an entirely quiet class that was like writing stuff. He just kind of stood in the door opening with his coffee. He's like, "Not that," and I just shh, I'm teaching, sit down. So
Jesus.
that got me permanently
Wait,
banned
how
again.
old were you at this time? What are we talking, like teens?
14, 15.
Okay. All right.
Um, this is perfect. This is perfectly me. Like I got in every situation I could get in trouble. I got in trouble, and it was always just because there was nothing to do for me.
Yeah.
It only started getting better when I went to university, right?
Gotcha.
Because I picked what I wanted to go to university for. I have a lot of respect for my teachers. Like especially nowadays, now I realize how hard it is to teach.
Right.
Uh, like I went back to a number of them and just went like, "I am so sorry," and they're like, "Did you turn out okay?" And they're like, and I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Then it was worth it." And I'm like, "Oh, you're the best." Like teachers are so good.
They are. Teachers
Um,
are generally good. Yes. I have found this to be
teachers
true
are
as well.
so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel awful. I went to when Mr. Robert went with retirement. I went to his, and he recognized me immediately. Even though the last time he saw me, I was like 6, and I'm like 20. I was 28 when I went back for his retirement. And he's been like, "Rami?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Wow, you've grown." I'm like, I sure hope so." And we had a good chat. He still plays chess. We said we would play more chess. Um, but I was very fortunate. Like there are so many people along the route of my life that could have taught me the wrong lessons, and instead, I guess they just kind of let me be an asshole, hoping that eventually it would all work out. Because I was helpful to the other students, right? I tried to, if they were stuck with class, I would try to help them out, and I did get good grades.
Sure.
Um,
What'd your parents think of? I mean, if you were doing this in school, your dad being a teacher, how was that? Did they know it was happening? Or, like what?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, the relationship with my parents when I was growing up was always a little strange because I was a very independent kid really quickly, and it was really hard for them, I think, to keep me under control.
Sure.
So I think they kind of tried everything. They tried like the strict approach. They tried the loose approach. They tried to like reward me with computer time. They tried to punish me by taking computer time away. I had like an hour and a half every day. That was kind of the rule. Um, and it just they really tried everything. I was just hard to handle, I guess. And I think I left my house at I left my parents' home at 15 over a girl. I was unhappy with the person I was dating, and he said not in my house, and I said okay. So I moved out, which was an incredibly Rami thing to do, I guess. Um, but it's the same thing. Like I think I needed to have independence, right? I needed to just be me to be able to create the life the way I wanted it, to create a construct, a structure in which I could feel comfortable before I could be close to the people who define the structure that I lived in, because there was always going to be friction there
Sure.
because they wanted to go to bed at some point, and I wanted to make video games until like 3 a.m. in the morning. Like they wanted me to get good grades and like not annoy the teachers, and I didn't care about annoying the teachers, and my grades were good enough. So what's the problem? Um, we had a harsh time, I think, for a while, and then afterwards, like a few years later, it kind of like came back together, and we just now as equals. And my dad, like being Egyptian, he was immediately like, "You're out of the house. You're an equal now. It's
Mm.
not in my house." So it started turning around, and we've been very close ever since. My parents have always been super supportive, even though my dad really doesn't understand what I do. He's just proud that
do
it was
do
remarkable.
do any parents understand what their children do apart
So
from
my
doctors and
mom,
lawyers?
my mom, my mom never understood, but always supported it,
Mm.
right? Because she was just the Dutch are very very good in that regard. Like they, because life is relatively safe here, their attitude is do what makes you happy. Like it's likely to earn you enough money to live a good life, right? Um, the Egyptians is different. Like if your kids don't get a good job, they will go into poverty and potentially die. So um, for a lot of people, it's sort of your career goals are you can be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or disgrace to the family, and those are your four career paths. And if you don't take one of those, then it you know there's no other options really.
Right.
And so my mom was always like, I don't know this video game thing, I don't understand this video game thing, but if this makes you happy, go for it. Well, my dad was always like, Rami, you're a smart kid. You should work for NASA. And I'm like, Dad, NASA's in the US. I'm, an Arab kid with 7 Arabic names that I'm not getting into NASA. Um, and he never he even when I was working um, in the games industry, he never really understood what I was doing. I subtitled Indie Game the movie for him so he could watch it, and I was like, "This," and he's like, "So you play video games all day?" I'm like,
Sure. Yeah.
um,
It's tough. It's
and
it's hard to teach your parents
and
what you
then
do for sure.
I think the first time he realized it is I got this award a few years ago called the Game Developers Choice Ambassador Award. Is one of the it's sort of like the it's hard to explain, but it's the Game Developers Choice Award is chosen by all of the professional game developers that have some sort of standing in the industry, right? And every year they pick a number of people, one for Lifetime Achievement Award, one for like certain breakthroughs, and one for who's the best ambassador for the medium.
Right.
And I won that one a few years ago, and I took my family to the award ceremony. And this is a huge hall. Like there's thousands of people in that room. There's like fancy VIP tables at the front, and my mom and dad and sibling got to sit there. And my dad sat down and he just looked around and he's like, "Are all these people here for you?" I'm like, "No, Dad. There's like a 3 hour show. Like I'm one part." And he's like, "They're all here for you." And I when I got the award, a friend of mine introduced me. I went up on the stage, and as I went up on the stage, the entire room gave a standing ovation that lasted long enough that I just had to start doing my speech at some point because I was running out of time.
Dang.
And when I came back down and I sat down next to him, um, he looked at me and said, "Told you they were here for you." And I think that was the point where my dad went like, "You know what? I don't understand it, but clearly what my son is doing matters, so I'm good." And now he asks. He still doesn't understand it. I tell him every week what's happening, and he just goes like, "Great,
You just got to
thank you."
win more awards. I think
Yeah,
ultimately.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just invite him to
Um,
more award shows and you'll be good. He'll get it.
but yeah, so dad is now just like, you know what? It's fine. It's not my era. I'll teach kids, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, I respect both of my parents a lot. I'm incredibly fortunate.
It's good. It's important, I think. Oftentimes, I think a lot of people don't get the chance to be able to do that. So it's good that you were able to. Circling back around to like grade school, you mentioned you were kind of like the smart ass is what I'll say. I think you said it much more eloquently. What type of like were there cliques at your school? Did you was there like the
Yeah,
sports clique and all that? Did you fit into any of those particularly?
it's not as defined as I, because I don't know what schools are like in the US particularly, but when
Right.
I watch that, like, we don't really do sports in school either. That's just, it doesn't exist the same way, right? We don't have like these sports teams. We don't have cheerleading teams. Like, you go to school to learn. That's it. Um, but we had our cliques. Obviously, we had the athletic kids that, outside of school went to sports. You had the smart kids. You had the nerds. You had the goths. You had the emos. You had these groups. I was just kind of with none of them. Uh, I never really cared that much. I had a few friends that I would always hang out with.
Yeah.
I got consistently bullied through my younger years. It took until I was like 14. I decided to fail a year of school, which was another problem because I needed to reinvent myself as not the guy that gets bullied.
Hmm.
So I failed a year of school, got into a new class. Instead of being the youngest kid, I was now like in the middle of the class, I guess, in terms of age. Um, and it's when anybody who gives me shit, like, I'm go- I'm gonna make them like regret that. And it was always through like just being a smartass about something, or in some cases helping other people, um, just to annoy them. But I was consistently I was not consistently considered one of the leaders of the class, both by the
Hmm.
teachers and the kids. I think I helped wherever I could help. If somebody was stuck with their homework, I would help them with their homework. Um, I spoke like honestly about a lot of things where other people didn't dare to. Um, it also helped that I pulled some stunts where I hit like audio discs with like XMs on it so that the teacher couldn't take the test on a day where nobody wanted to take it. Like, I did stunts.
Sure.
Um, and so I was always kind of like, after that point where I failed class, I was always sort of the kid that just sort of led the nonsense in the group, and I think that was my clique. My clique was that I was not part of any. Like, I was with any of those at the moment that it felt appropriate, and then I was with the other one the next week.
Sure.
I kind of floated between them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, at heart, I was definitely a nerd, though. It's just I didn't like the nerds very much either,
They were
because
too
they were
nerdy.
so controlling about who got to be a nerd. Like,
Oh, they
oh
were
yeah,
the
do you like that?
gatekeeper nerds. Okay.
It was definitely gatekeeper nerds. Yeah, it's like, oh, you have to like this, and I like my Pokemon cards, and I like my Magic the Gathering and Yu Gi Oh whenever that was a thing, and uh, but it was always so like, oh, you get, and I'm just like, I don't care. Let me
Yeah.
just make my games and shut up. Um, so it was, yeah, I never really had a group I belonged to. It took until university when it was like game developers that I realized, oh, these people are my family. Like,
Sure.
that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Um, I think everyone kind of has at least one or two exceptional stories in their younger years that, either proves to be a point of pride or a point of disappointment. You told a couple,
Yeah.
specifically that one taking over the classroom, but is there one that like comes to mind first before all of that, that is more grandiose than taking over the classroom during school?
Oh boy.
If you could narrow it down to a singular moment.
Boy. I think probably the most typical Rami moment that happened in my youth was I wrote a script that could remotely shut down a computer on a network, right? And my goal was actually to try and shut down a computer over the internet, but that was just not within the scope of the program. But I realized that I could do it on a local network. So I went to school, and there was this high school, and there was this big room with like 40 computers, and I ran the script with a wildcard, which means that instead of any specific PC, I just went and saw if it would take down everything. Um, which one by one the computers in the room started shutting down. Um, to my terror. And I remember, I very distinctly remember that as the computers were starting to go down, like randomly around the rule, I was just so scared that my computer would be the only one still up at the end. So I just sort of subtly, like everybody started yelling that their computers had shut down and that their work hadn't been saved. And I wrecked a lot of people's days that day. Um, but it also took down all the systems that the school used, and it turned out that when they all booted up, that IT had not installed security very well, and that they had to manually enable the, the school computers to not be visible on the network. Um, so I made a share. So first, I copied all the tests off that computer immediately. I never used that, but I had them anyway. Because I could. And the second one is I made a network share on the computer that held the grades and the tests, and I put StarCraft on there. And
Good choice.
from that point on, StarCraft was all we did as a class. We did tower defense, sunken defense. I eventually ended up getting Quake on there, Quake 3 Arena.
Of course.
We started like making maps, and it was the greatest thing. They also had this program that allowed them to monitor us, but because I had gotten access to that computer and I made a user account that nobody knows for a long time, I could use that too. So I once called out a teacher for shopping on eBay during class, and they couldn't figure out how I knew that.
Jesus.
So I think that is like my claim to fame. When I left high school, I went to the kid that was 3 years below me, that was like the next nerd. And I just went to him and I went like, "Kid, here's the password. Here's the share. Here's how to access it. Keep it alive." And he did. He kept it alive. That like IT never caught it, as far as I know.
Nice.
And yeah, no. As far as I know, the last time I went there, I checked, and the share was still available. StarCraft wasn't on there anymore.
Sure. StarCraft 2 is now in its place, most likely.
But yeah, no. Also not StarCraft 2. They just had no StarCraft anymore. I don't know what's up with kids nowadays. But I'm like,
they're
no
not.
StarCraft.
They're playing the Fortnites. That's probably what was on there.
I mean, fair enough.
Pre-installed.
Like, what do you do without sunken defense and tower defense? Like, how do you grow up without those things?
I don't know. You don't. I think you just remain an adolescent forever. You're not taught the harsh realities of sunken defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about there. You just referenced it, and also kind of how you got into programming and game creation. Do you remember any of like your first games or your first prototypes? Were they advanced at all, or were they simply like, what you would expect?
The first program I ever wrote was so the first line of code I ever wrote was in QBasic, because there was a game called Gorillas, which was like that tanks game where you type an angle like 25 and then a velocity,
right,
and it just kind of like draws the arc and you hope it hits the other player.
Yeah.
But the only way to play that was open QBasic, load gorillas.bas, and then run that code. But I loved it because it was the only game we had on our first home computer. It was our first home computer. I was 6 or 7. 6. I was 6. And Gorillas, if I went through the code and I saw the menu text, and I just deleted that and I just typed Rami. And then when I ran the game again, the game just started up and it just said Rami. And that was it. Like I've been fascinated by that idea that I can type words into a computer and then video games happen. I just never stopped doing that. Like that's literally what happened. My life story is that I'm still trying to get my name to appear on screen, I guess. So the first code I wrote myself was it basically went, you are in a cave, you can go east or west, and then you had to type 1 or 2, 1 for east or 2 for west. If you type 1, you went east, you escaped. And if you type 2, you died. And the only reason it was that simple is because I hadn't realized that in an if statement, right, like a branch of code, I could put another branch of code. So I just thought this was it.
It's binary. Yeah, like
this is what you can do. Like it's either that or that. And then I didn't realize that you can do that same trick again in one of those branches. Um, so I did a bunch of QBasic. StarCraft was huge for me. The StarCraft map editor, like real tools, like triggers, collision, setting like units, and like playing with parameters. Um, I um, I modded a lot again back in those days. Like most games were just like plain text files. Like they would call them like .dat, but then you would open them in Notepad and they were just plain text, and you just go like, well, speed is 3,000,
Right.
and then you just press forward and the game would crash because your car was out of bounds now. So you slowly started to understand like here's the limitations, here's the and I just sort of started puzzling until everything kind of came together in my head as code.
Hmm.
Um, for the first part of that, I knew no English, like not at all. I had no idea what if meant. I just knew that,
That was a function of some sort.
yeah, if you typed if, then if the one thing happened, then that would happen, and if the other thing happened, that would happen. Didn't know what if was. Didn't know what then was. Didn't know what else was either. For, loop, random, like no idea.
It
I
was the
just
language
figured
of
out
the
what they would do.
ancients, the
It was
magical
magic,
language. Yeah.
but that was genuinely what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like you type these spells, and then the computer device does stuff for you. Um, so yeah, the early stuff I did was awful, like just really really bad. But it
Well,
was
how
just
old
me
were you
trying to
though?
figure out.
Like, was that
Like I
early
started
teens?
at 7.
Oh,
You
okay.
know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
One claim to fame that nobody will give a shit about, but I think is cool, is I made a StarCraft map,
Okay.
right? Where you would pick a hero at the start,
Okay.
and on both sides of the map was a thing you had to destroy. There was a north route, a south route, and a middle route, and you could grow your character. You just played one character. You could grow your character. You could upgrade it. It was called Horizons. It was really unbalanced. It was absolutely shit. But the first time I saw Dota, I went like, mother.
Ice Frog stole your
Um,
shit, man.
I mean, what I built was really bad. Like it was really bad. But um, it's funny that you can immediately, when I saw MOBAs for the first time, I'm like, I know how this happened because this is just the space on a map you have. You can't make 5 lanes. It has to be 3.
Sure.
And like working with your heroes, here are your limitations. I was like, I made this very poorly one day. And it was not very good. It was not very fun. There were like 30 people that played it on the StarCraft servers. The map was called Horizons. I'm sure you can still find it somewhere.
Huh.
Um,
Yeah. I wonder if
but
that's still
yeah,
uploaded on like BattleNet. I don't know if those maps ever go away.
I don't know either. It was a custom map. That's
Well, I
like
guess
people had to like
now that I think about it,
back
before
then
the
people
days
had
of
to
StarCraft
download it.
2, you had to download the map and then put it into
You
your
had to download
UMS
the
files.
file.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone would have to
Yeah,
have the .map file somewhere. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So my game went nowhere. Nobody played it. Nobody stole my
You
idea.
missed
I just
out.
made a shitty thing. But yeah, sometimes I think about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good times. Those are the kind of memories that you have where you're like, life could have gone really differently there.
Did you have a as a kid when you started programming, did you have like a dream game that you wanted to make that was always just too advanced or
Yep.
maybe too simple that you made it and you
So, so
found
here's
how
the
simple
thing.
it was?
This is gonna sound really fantastical after I just explained that I accidentally invented MOBAs.
Yeah.
Um,
Please go.
so I also accidentally invented Battle Royale, I guess. Um, no, so I wanted to make a game. It was called like Sea Dome or something. I worked on a prototype, but the idea was there was an underwater dome. There were 20 people in the dome. Each of them was controlled by a multiplayer person. And this was hugely inspired by Tribes. I don't know if you remember Star Siege Tribes.
Oh yeah, of course.
Uh, but yes, it was 100% inspired by Tribes. All these people having different roles and playing together. I wanted to do um, an underwater dome with this architecture in it, right? This buildings, these towers, and um, the dome would break, right? And it would start filling with water, and there wouldn't be that many weapons, but your goal was to be the last one to get out of the dome, right? That was it. There's one submarine, one person can go in the submarine, and the door to the submarine doesn't open until a certain time, and then it's just the first one there. Um, You didn't have that many weapons. There was a harpoon. You could get key cards. You could lock people into rooms as the rooms were filling up with water. Um, but ultimately, the goal was last person standing. That person would be able to get to the submarine and get out. Um, Here's the problem. Did you know that water is really hard to do in video games?
I've heard that from my friend Rami. Yeah, he's told me on
Okay.
multiple
Water
occasions.
is water is really hard to do in video games, and my like 14-year-old brain just went like, water. We'll just fill this entire game with dynamic water. And I built the level, I built the dome, I like made some of the characters, and then it came to creating the water, and literally the only thing I can do was just make a thing go up. Is be like, if you're under that, you're underwater. If you're above that, you're. But I couldn't make people get stuck in rooms. I couldn't make water like flow into a room if a door was open, but not if the door was closed. Um,
Physics,
I couldn't
man, they're
simulate
tough.
pressure,
Yeah.
so I just gave up on the game. I think I started like 3 times, and eventually I just went like, you know what, this ain't it. There was this game called Hydrophobia, I think, or something that had
Sounds
real
familiar.
time dynamic water. Um, like I played it, I didn't love it, and I just went like, you know what? The thing with childhood ideas as a game developer is they're always bad. Like they're really easy to dream up. They're really easy to go like, oh wow, wouldn't it be great if? And then you just imagine all these cool situations. But then you think about how they would play, and now I think of the game idea, and I just go like, there's no way this is fun because for the majority of the players, you're gonna get stuck in a room and slowly drown as the water rises, which
Yeah.
is not very fun. Um, like there's a bunch of interesting like tension in there, but the majority is just like I would play it once or twice and then just be done with it. It
Mm.
doesn't have the versatility of a battle royale where you get to tell like wildly different stories every time. Um, it will make a better movie, honestly. Like somebody should make that movie. Like give it to Hideo Kojima. See what the fuck happens.
Yeah. There you go. Let him know. Let him know. Let's talk about university here. Then we'll take our first break. I'll let you say your school's name so I don't butcher it. I don't even want to attempt to try to pronounce. Uh,
De HKU, de Hogeschool van de Kunsten Utrecht.
yeah, what Rami said. Was it always expected of you to seek out higher education? Was that something that your parents like? It was the part of the plan, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean the core in the Netherlands, it's almost hard to not do higher education. It's like subsidized, and especially in the days where I was growing up, I actually got money to go to school. Like the Netherlands paid me 400 ish or 200 and something ish euros
Now,
a month.
in the U.S., we call that a scholarship. Is that what it's called over there, or is that you actually got paid?
No, it's just government.
Okay, all
Like
right,
everybody gets it. You
yeah.
don't have to hit certain
You don't have
grades
to
for
pay it
anything.
back or anything like that. Okay, yeah, we get.
No,
Gotcha.
you could get more, but you would pay that back. In the end, when I graduated, well, graduated, when I dropped out and eventually kind of graduated my university, I had like a $7,000 loan that was
Gotcha.
considered high in the Netherlands. Like
Oh
you just
yeah,
go like,
that's
wow, you
so
spent a
high.
lot of money.
Every
Like,
American college student right now is rolling their eyes and crying afterwards.
I
After
know, I know, I feel really bad, but
yeah, yeah.
they also shifted it to a loan, which was great because um, well, it's not great. It sucks. But right after they did that, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, he wanted to have a photo op with some upcoming talent in the games industry, and he ended up with us. And his PA or something went like, "Do you want to be in a photo?" And I'm like, "If he returns like the study financing to be a gift instead of a loan," and so he never. I just turned him down for the photo, um, which was great. Um, Hey, got to use the little power you have, you
You
know.
tried. Yeah, you
Um,
tried.
I really tried, but um, so yeah, it was not as much an expectation of my parents. It's just kind of how life goes for most people in the Netherlands. Like you can opt out of higher education if it's just not your thing,
Mm.
but in general, you just kind of do it. Just why not?
Yeah, yeah,
It's cheap, it's accessible, and afterwards you'll earn more money. Um,
I think a lot of people also
So
just don't know what they want to do at that point in their life. So it's just the next step, right? Like it's the next
yeah,
logical step, kind of like what you're, the plan, as
but
we've mentioned.
in the Netherlands, it also used to be much easier to start a thing and then go like, this ain't it, and just do the next thing. You could just kind of experiment. Like I had friends who were on their third university program. They did 1 year on each of them, and
Hmm.
at the end of your first year, there's something called your propeduise, which is basically like it's basically saying the school accepts you as a student for the rest of the course. And if they kick you out before that point, they don't get penalties or something. If they kick you out after that point, they get a penalty for like basically wasting time, I guess.
Sure.
Um, so there were people that would just go up to their P, up to their pay, and then go like, this ain't for me, I'll leave. Um, which was, it's the Netherlands are so sensible. Like so much of the Netherlands is just incredibly sensible, and it. So I just went, and it ended up being game design because I convinced my parents. I convinced my mom didn't need to be convinced. I convinced my dad that it was technically engineering.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, "Okay, that's good."
You
And he
told them
was
the far fetched idea that you would one day be in a room with 1,000 people and they would all stand up
yeah,
and clap for you, right? Yeah. Yeah.
that was genuinely like my hope was that I would get to make. I wanted to be a programmer. That
Yeah.
was it. Like this whole like indie like ambassador like public speaker industry figure, that was not the plan.
Yeah.
I wanted to. I wanted at the end of a game. I wanted my name to roll by under the list of programmers. That was it. Like nothing more.
Yeah, I'm going to use that as a segue to our break then. When we come
Well,
back, we're going to ask Rami what caused him to drop out of university and kind of set up the rest of your professional life. Because I think I did not know about this, and in the research, I found some interesting things that Rami did
uh,
during his time at university. So don't go nowhere. We'll be right back with more FrieNDA right after this. We'll see you guys in about 5 or 6 minutes.